happened in that last talk. You just went through X-Men with me, didn't you? Oh, that's wonderful. See, I like that. You want to go through X-Men again? I'll tell you what happened. When we were upstairs, I walk in the room. You know, the program book has two schedules. One's the little map block, and the other is the listing. So on my table, I have it open to the listings, and I circled all my talks, and I went 1, 2, 3. So I get upstairs. Oh, yeah, that's supposed to have 12:15. I know I'm supposed to be someplace. So I go upstairs, which was actually appropriate. And I go up there, and I'm like, in my head, X-Men, because that was first in that written schedule. And so that's what happened. All along, Hulk was supposed to be going on. So I found that to be most exciting. And none of you guys said anything. Nobody in that room said anything. We had a wonderful time, did we not? See, there we go. And so, you know, he obviously wants to see another panel. So we'll be seeing X-Men again. Somebody else from up there was here, and he said, "Oh, you got to do X-Men again." So that's what happened. So it looks like you're all here for X-Men, yes? Yes? Okay, so that's where we're going. We're going back to X-Men. I can't disappoint everybody that walked into the room. I think this is absolutely hysterical. It happens, you know. And like I said, the staff didn't stop me. Nobody did. So we just rolled with it, and that was kind of that. Anyhow, back to Anthropology of X-Men. Well, there was so much we didn't cover the first time. We'll go over it again for those of you who missed it. Awesome. Anyhow, it's not too often that I get to talk about X-Men twice in one day. And you know what? In all honesty, it's really difficult to cover a franchise like this in an hour. We could pull apart social issues and genetic issues, genetic engineering issues. We could be here for days, really pulling apart X-Men and looking at it in terms of how it reflects our own world and look at our own ethical issues as they relate to X-Men. So, I mean, it's a fantastic franchise to play with. You know, there's no question about that. So we will try to do it justice in the time that we have and get through it. Again, glad you're sitting for the second showing. You get in free, you know, the second time around. I'm just saying. Anyhow, I don't know how many of you know me. I'm Daryl Frizzetti. I work at Western Nevada College up in Carson City. I don't know if any of you have seen any of my other talks or not along the way at other conventions. I've been doing this for about 7 years now, doing conventions and publishing on fandom, culture, and teaching special topics, classes in Star Trek, Star Wars, and gosh, I have an Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings. You know something about me the way you're looking. Yeah? Oh, you did? Okay, there you go. That explains. You said, oh, yeah, I know you got all this stuff. Yeah, and I'll be back at my table for a very brief time after this particular panel. Then I go do Wonder Woman. So I do have a few copies of the Star Trek book left over there. If anybody's interested, there's a sample copy on the table. I'm also promoting my Batman survey online because now I'm starting to collect data so I can write... what'll be a publication external from a book right now, but on fandom, culture, and Batman, and then, of course, incorporate that into my cultural themes and Batman book next year. So if you are interested in the survey, you can certainly contact me. I have my cards here with me. You can come by the table, pick up that information, too. All right, so that's enough about me. And back to X-Men. Okay. I really have always felt very strongly about the messages that come out of X-Men and what they say about us as a society. What they really, more importantly, say about us in terms of the patterns that we continue to repeat throughout human history. Really. The idea of prejudice and marginalized peoples trying to fight for their place in mainstream society. And this really encompasses to me what X-Men is all about, although a new twist was brought to my attention through my veterinarian not long ago. And no spoilers from the crowd, but a new twist was brought to light, and I've pondered that new twist and re-pondered that new twist. So I did include at least one slide that addresses it, and I will put that out there and see what people have to say about it. In the meantime, I'd like to focus on really what X-Men seems to be primarily trying to target, which is, racism, bigotry, and prejudice in just about every way you could possibly imagine. And the way that it portrays that fight against those things, you've got one group of people, mutants, but even the mutants are divided. You've got the militant sect, and rightfully so, given Eric's background and his outlook on life, how he perceives humanity and how he perceives his status. Although, Eric's kind of on the fence about several things there. Kind of back and forth a little bit. And probably some regrets in his old age as the Sentinels are coming after them. But I think it's very well done in terms of how they portray the best ways to perhaps fight the system and bring about change. There's Charles working with the system or within the system, and then you've got Magneto, who's giving the X-Men or giving mutant populations a very bad reputation and fueling that political fire and allowing the system to continue to put out the word that X-Men are evil, X-Men are dangerous, we must fear these mutants, and we need to eradicate the mutants. So Eric's militant approach does that, and we see that with any group. There are extreme groups, subgroups within the main group that give the whole group a bad name, huh? Somebody said something? Oh, that must be this thing talking. Okay. Never mind, it's okay. So, there's groups within the main group that give them a bad name overall and fuel that potential of the political leaders or religious leaders to continue to attack them. And uphold, well, see, we told you they were bad. We told you they were dangerous. And this proves our point. And so Eric continues to help that cause and never helps his own cause, really. And Charles keeps trying to get that through to him. The way to do this is not by being militant and not by killing people. So I think that alone is a very powerful message for all groups that may find themselves attracted to something like the X-Men franchise. They see this message of hope and they see the consequences of that militant action versus the more peaceful working with the system approach. So that alone is an overarching, important message that comes through in comics. And one I think that really solidifies X-Men and comics in general as contemporary myth. That narrative is a very powerful narrative in X-Men. And I do have a slide in here that mentions how they use the comic in Logan. Has everybody seen Logan? Anybody not seen Logan? Oh! It's going to kill me. All those spoilers. Darn. Well, I kind of spoiled it for that poor gentleman back there already. Anyhow, a couple of quotes like quite a bit of difficulties in society, as we will see. So mostly what I look at is several areas. What it means to be human, commentary on social issues. How many days are they going to let us lock in here for? We should, this is really something that encompasses a much bigger period of time, a full class. We'll try to do what we can and do it justice in the hour we have. Ethics, culture, individual morals, need for diversity and the role of the individual. We have a lot of very powerful individual figures that make a lot of effort and a lot of change, good or bad, in X-Men. And of course, the X-Men mythos has an overarching influence on humanity, which I think speaks to the power of comics. First question, what does it even mean to be human? How do we define what it means to be human? How do we know we're human? We got a good amount of diversity in this room as I look around. Deadpool's just a whole nother being unto himself over here. Okay, we could have some fun with that. There's our outcast in the group right there. My goodness. No, Deadpool's cool. But if we look at what it means to be human and we understand the history that goes, I could start, I picked the Neanderthals as my starting point. Basically my background is biology and physical anthropology, and this is basically, my side work in cultural anthropology, pop culture. So I'm very familiar with the big Neanderthal debate. And are they part of the human lineage or aren't they? Are they human or aren't they human? And, then we have to get into issues, a lot of the status of the Neanderthals has changed with the political times. And, as you read the literature, and you look at the work that's been done on Neanderthals, you got to understand physical anthropology and the people that like to lump everything together, the people that split species left and right. Then you've got the geneticists versus the morphology. I mean, this goes on. I don't know how familiar you all are with biological anthropology, but it's a fun thing. And I've basically fallen on the side of people that classify them as humans, as Homo sapiens. And there's a good amount of genetic evidence as well as morphological or anatomical evidence that supports the fact that they were breeding with the other Homo sapien populations, and obviously lineages continued on. So I'm guessing if we all interbred and we produced children that went on to breed, we had fertile offspring, probably all one species. But what do I know? You know, I'm just one little cog in the whole biological taxonomy nightmare that still exists. But did they have language? Sure they did. Was it exactly like ours? No, their anatomy was different. They were adapted they were hyperpolar adapted, which altered their nervous system structure, which altered their brain size. You know, because of where they were living and the few cultural tools they had at their disposal meant their body was taking the brunt of all this. Yeah, the Homo sapiens come along and they have a better toolkit and more culture, more sophistication. But that doesn't take away from what the Neanderthals created. Did they have language? Well, did they talk to each other? I'm betting they probably did somehow. So they had some type of linguistic system. Could they communicate and express messages that the others in the group understood? So, are they human or not? Sometimes they're classified with Homo sapiens, and sometimes they're not. Or sometimes there's subspecies of Homo sapiens. You will soon see what I mean. Next question, are there sub-specific groups of humans today? African Americans, the Jews under Hitler. What ethnic group do we want to point to? Oh, the Asians. We have some Asian representatives as I look around the room. We probably have some Hispanic people as I look around. We got that Deadpool thing over here. This is making for an interesting study. Oh, I like having Deadpool. That's a nice addition to our little collection of humans in here. There was a time in human history where people practiced classification based on racial features. Craniometrics was the big thing, and we measured people's IQs by measuring their facial features. You know, we would take their skull, we'd measure the slopes of the forehead, the nasal angles, the eye orbit, pick something. We measured it. And all the skulls that were ever measured were always compared to European skulls. And why do we think that might have been? Oh, that's right, because the white European males were the ones holding all the power, so we needed to legitimize this and solidify our place and maintain our power. And so, these are inferior human species. These are subspecies. Of what? Which we don't want to maintain the status quo. The status quo tells us that we continue to classify people by the way they look and by even what they think, if it's different from how we think, or the people in power, how it's different from what they look like or how they think. And therefore they deem dangerous. Yeah, it's a danger to their power because we might uproot the system. Well, we can't have that. Of course we can. XMEN says we can. And we probably should. And I would bet money that this is one of the reasons that this is a very solid narrative and will continue to be perpetuated throughout time with people being very much attracted to the messages in XMEN. And there it is. They call the X-Men not human too, by the way. But then again, Eric's over there with his extreme group telling the humans that they're inferior to his X-Men. Well, they're not X-Men, to his mutants. Anyhow, a little history on X-Men. 1960s, the debut of the comics did focus on the issues of racism, prejudice, and the good versus evil theme. It came out during the times of, all kinds of social movements, most famous being the Civil Rights Movement, of course. For a while, the comics dipped down in popularity, but as soon as they re-diversified the comics in the 70s, this took off again. People saw themselves being represented by the characters. You have the introduction of Colossus from the Soviet Union, Wolverine from Canada, Storm from Kenya, and a Native American called Thunderbird. Are people somewhat familiar with the comic series as well? I know a lot of people have only seen movies and know X-Men that way, so I'm just not sure. And I don't know how many people ever saw the animated X-Men either. Okay, so a little bit of background there. All of this is on my website. You can download the PowerPoints. If there are comics you have not read and would like to read, all you have to do is pull the slides. 1982, a graphic novel called God Loves, Man Kills inspired the X2 film. And that nice William Stryker. Well, yeah. See, this is a whole nother class just on Stryker. Okay? That's a whole nother day for me sometime. Well, William Stryker, because he's got issues. He's got a son who's a mutant. And he's got issues with Charles because he doesn't think anybody helped his son. And he can't, it's like he's embarrassed to have this kid who's a mutant. And so he's going after the mutants. So it's a very interesting character to explore. And I'd love to at some point. But here in this graphic novel in 82, he's a minister and he's stirring up anti-religious sentiments against the mutants. He's fighting for genocide on the basis of religious morals. Okay, so how many contemporary examples can you all give me in the next 3.5 seconds? The list, it goes out the door, doesn't it? I mean, we're fighting over ideology? Well, you believe something differently than I do, so who cares? Is this causing me great harm in my world? Probably not. Are there extreme people within groups that do try to cause harm over it? Yes. And you've got to remember something about faith. Faith serves two functions. It has a very much a solid psychological function for people. It gives them a foundation. It gives them their center, their grounding, morally, ethically, and so on and so forth. But it's also used as a political tool. That's the other side of faith. A woman named Shireen Hunter wrote a wonderful book back, late 90s, 1998, called The Future of Islam in the West, and she goes into great detail exploring religion as both a political tool and a faith-based system. And it's so glaring how people are using this. So I think that's an important thing that comes through in X-Men. They also showcase that issue, whether it's the comics or otherwise. In the 1990s, we had a lot of upheaval in Marvel in general. The comic changed. Fans were not happy with the X-Men and the changes, but that was all internal, I think, what was going on with the comic. A decade later,